Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show, Red Pill Edition. My name is Leon Jones, and in this segment, I got to talk about that god awful stimulus bill that Congress just passed. This bill has definitely in needs of vetoing by the president. $600 that all of us get compared to what we got last time. So, the title of tonight's video is "This Stimulus Bill is a Failure." This stimulus bill is a failure. Now, why do I call it a failure? I call it a failure because I'm looking at both parties. This is a bipartisan bill. And anybody who signed on to this bill needs to have their head examined. A 5,600-page bill, and what you have in this bill is nothing but pork. Now, Congress was very slick. They called it a $900 billion bill. But what they did, they added the government spending into this bill as well. So they actually combined the coronavirus bill of $900 billion plus the $1.4 trillion government, or I call it pork spending. So if you are awake and you do the math, you're looking at a $2.3 trillion bill. Now, the last coronavirus bill, I believe, was 2.5 to 3 trillion. Now, we are already in debt, and what I am seeing now is, and it's always happened, the politicians don't care about people. They care about their special interests. They care about the corporations. They care about their cronies overseas, because some of this money is going into Burma. Some is going into a gender program in the Middle East. Egypt is involved with getting some of this money. And even the people on welfare, and welfare always gets paid, they're getting some money. Now, we're all getting money, but we're getting a measly $600 when we got $1,200 last time. Now, all that's happening is there is a redistribution of taxpayer money for basically the foreign cronies. I mean, when illegal immigrants' families are getting $1,800, that's 3 times more than what Americans are getting. When the Kennedy Center, the Smithsonian, they're getting monies, and they are closed. And right now, when it comes to small business, there's nothing in there for small business people. Small business makes up 60% of the economy in this country. Small business creates most of the jobs, and we have gone over people and small businesses for months needing a second stimulus. And the reason why it wasn't passed earlier, because the Democrats wanted to stick pork in this bill. And I also believe there's monies in this bill going to some state and local governments. Well, here's a problem with that. Some of these state and local governments are in the blue states that were destroyed by the riots that came from Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And in the end, when you look at the bill, it's a disaster. And that tells me that politicians don't have our best interest, and we ought to get rid of them all by having some term limits, because regardless of what you think about Donald Trump is the only one who is fighting for the people. Do you think Joe Biden's going to fight for the people? Do you believe Harris is going to fight for the people? No. These senators, they voted themselves a pay raise. Now, they're not getting a pay raise now, but if you look at what they make, they get $170,000 a year. It might be a drop in the bucket, but a base salary of $170,000, most of us don't even make that kind of money. But looking at the stimulus bill does not help out the Americans when it comes to rent, car payments, insurance. I mean, we already have high health care premiums from Obamacare. So this socialism, this redistribution of wasteful spending isn't working. Now, President Trump wants to scrap the provisions, that's the pork that's going to foreign countries. I mean, you had Honduras on there. These are people who are illegals coming over into this country. And again, families of these illegals are getting $1,800. Again, welfare, which is SNAP, they're getting more monies. The Art Center, the Kennedy Center, the Smithsonian, Egypt. And what's Egypt going to do with the money? They're probably going to buy weapons from Russia. I don't care about a gender program in the Middle East. I don't live in the Middle East. Do you believe that the people from the Middle East care about us? In fact, they don't. They don't even like our style of living. In fact, their style of government, and I mentioned it in my last video, they have an Islamic theocracy. In other words, they use religion to dictate to their people how they're going to treat their people. And the people over there, particularly women, they're treated like they're not human beings. They're not civilized. But they use religion as a cachet, as morality, because the Middle Eastern people, they don't care about the West. But the West is basically playing into all of those foreign countries, China included. And it's a shame that we hard-working people get up, we go to work, we have to pay taxes. If we don't pay our taxes, we're penalized. The politicians can do whatever they want to do because we don't challenge them. And this is what happens when we have a lot of people who are uninformed when it's time to vote. I mean, this bill is 55 or 5,600 pages. Do you think your Congress people and your senators read that bill? No, they didn't read that bill. Just like Obamacare, nobody read it. They just pushed the bill through. Next thing you know, the president signed Obamacare into law. And look at what we got. And there was no Republican support on the Obamacare bill. But this bill had bipartisan support. And I'm very, very disappointed in the Republicans. Now, there are some Republicans who are fighting But for the most part, I knew all along that the Republicans like Mitch McConnell, who are part of the establishment Republicans, they were in this gig as well because they want to stay in power. They like the lifestyle. A lot of those politicians that we vote for don't have any understanding about living and working in the real world because they've been in politics for a long time, and that includes Joe Biden. They think that they know what's best for us, but in the end, they don't really care about the American people. And we American people must understand that. When you get a bill that is a total failure, that isn't going to help any of us, from Congress. Now, the good thing, it's going to the president's desk. Now, they don't have a line item veto because he would basically veto all the pork out of this bill. Now, I know Congress might be thinking we should have made this bill veto proof. But what's going to happen if Trump vetoes this bill? I believe it takes 2/3 of Congress to override a veto. So what Trump is going to have to do is talk to certain Republican House members and certain Republican senators because they don't need 2/3 overriding that veto, because once that veto is overridden, the bill is going to stand. And in the end, when we go vote, we always talk about the president. What's important is we must vote for our Congress people, because our Congress people are our legislatures. Many of us don't understand that. The president has powers given to him by Congress. This is why he can use executive orders. But the president is not a king or monarch. In fact, we live in a republic where our representatives are voted for by us, and then they're elected based off of tally of votes. But again, this bill right here, and I believe a lot of the pork started from the Democrats, because the Democrats right now believe that President Trump is going to be out of office. Now, there's some Republicans who believe the same thing as well. So they believe if they pass a bill like this, most of the American people are going to be too ignorant to understand the bill anyway. Because when you have a bill that is so large and you have complex language in the bill, for the most part, your uninformed Americans aren't going to comprehend language like quid pro quo and all the different codes. You need lawyers to basically explain this bill. Now, for us as workers, Donald Trump said he wanted to do $2,000. $2,000, I believe, is adequate, but $600 isn't going to be enough. Small businesses. And it's funny how you get people like Gavin Newsom and Cuomo, they want to shut down all the small businesses, but yet they keep Costco, they keep Walmart, they keep Shop, Stop, and Save, they keep Safeway, they keep all the larger establishments open, but they certainly close the small businesses down. Well, some of these politicians don't understand that small businesses are also a tax base, and the more taxes the government gets, you look at it, the more they're going to spend. Right now, we have a government that is very wasteful. They only care about their constituents. With $600, you think about that. That is half of what we got the first time. Now, if you have a family of 4, husband, wife, and 2 children, you get $2,400. You see, it's the hardworking people that have been screwed by this bill, if it stands. But people like me, ABL, Patricia Dixon, Karen Kennedy, conservative guy, Will Johnson, we're going to be the voice that people hear. We're going to be the voice that's going to influence some of the Congress people by way of media, because I know people watch my videos as well. I follow Trump on Twitter. I follow some of those Congress people on Twitter. They follow me. Our voices have to be heard. And we got to get the voters out there to call their Congress people to say no to this bill. Because once this bill goes through, you're going to have illegals who shouldn't even be here. Families of illegals, let me correct myself, they're going to get 3 times more than what we're getting. You're going to have the Kennedy Center, the Smithsonian, the Art Center, Egypt, countries like Burma, the Middle East, and you're going to have, I'll just throw Venezuela in there, Mexico, these poor Hispanic countries, they're going to get monies. Welfare benefits are going to go to people who aren't working. In fact, I believe if you are getting any type of government assistance, you should not be allowed to vote, because all you're going to do is vote for programs, and it's going to keep you irresponsible, because people like me, we're going to get our taxes raised so we can have our tax money redistributed to individuals who don't want to be part of this country. Now, this country is supposed to be an American dream. It is not the workers' fault that COVID came here. It was China's fault. What they should have done was allow businesses to stay open. Because when it comes to COVID anyway, COVID comes from other systems, like respiratory systems. It affects your lungs. If you've had other health problems, you're going to get affected. But if you're really young, and if you're older and you're healthy, COVID isn't going to bother you. But if you look at what's going on now, you got a number of people who are politicians, who are frontline health workers. They're also getting the vaccine. I don't trust the vaccine. I know I've heard some individuals have gotten side effects from the vaccine. But in the long run, COVID almost killed the economy. And it's not the fault of small business that they were told to close by these politicians who have used COVID as a political weapon to basically experiment with their socialist theories. COVID didn't stop BLM from going out there destroying property. COVID didn't stop Antifa from destroying property. And have to ask this: where is BLM? Where's Black Lives Matter? Where's defund the police? after the election, all that nonsense has subsided. Because something else that's happened besides this bill, and I said it on my last video, BLM in 6 months made $10.6 million. Correction, $10.6 billion. That's $10.6 billion. Where did all that money go? And if you look at what's going on, you have the people on the left, they don't want capitalism for us, they want capitalism for themselves. And when it comes to countries that have a dictatorship, most of the bureaucrats get all the money while all of the citizens suffer. They're in poverty. Now, I don't believe that's going to happen here, but it is funny when we tell small businesses they have to close, and a number of these small businesses are following guidelines. They're making their customers wear their masks. They're putting up plexiglass to try to reduce people from getting the coronavirus, but it still doesn't work. Because what we have is a two-party system, but they both want the same thing. They want power. You have the Democrats telling us one thing, and you have the Republicans telling us another. But in the end, what I see is opposite sides of the same coin. I know the Democrats were for all this pork, but the Republicans signed on to this bill as well, so they're just as guilty. In fact, if you really think about it, very few Republicans are fighting for the president, and the president is fighting for all of us. And I don't care what anybody says, whether you're on the left or whether you're on the right. We in America are supposed to be given an opportunity to live the American dream. But we can't live the American dream when we come into a catastrophe that basically stifles the economy. But thank goodness we didn't go back to the Great Depression of 1929, which lasted at least for 10 years or longer, because the American economy did not get back on its feet until after World War II. Now, the economy in some states is coming back. But again, in this bill, when I see that they're giving monies to state and local governments, I become very skeptical, because state and local governments are the ones in the blue states that had all the destruction. To me, Antifa and BLM should pay for the destruction that they caused in those blue states. I live here in Indiana. My tax money should not have to pay for the damage to the blue states that are run by Democrats. It's the government in those states' responsibility to handle their own budgets. But again, with this bill, you got nothing but scraps coming from $900 billion. $600. That's the scrap we get. And that 1.4 trillion, that's the pork. And see, what the politicians wanted us to think when it came to this bill, they wanted us to look at the $900 billion. That's all they wanted us to look at. So they're trying to incorporate government spending and COVID together. It's $2.3 trillion no matter how you slice it. We who are the working people are not benefiting from the bill. Again, you got illegals. You got an art center. You got a Smithsonian. You got a gender program for the Mideast. You got Egypt. You got Honduras. Those states are getting the money from the pork barrel spending. And we, who are the taxpayers, are paying for that spending. When you have illegals, and they're illegals because they broke the law, who are getting 3 times the amount of money that we're getting, there's a problem. The SNAP program, which I believe is a welfare program, they're getting more money. But welfare has always gotten paid. And I forgot to tell you, I believe you have unemployment. That's going to continue at $300 per week on the federal side. And then unemployment also goes by, I believe it's 3/4 or 80% of your income. So I don't have a problem with people receiving unemployment, but when you're getting federal benefits on top of state benefits, you could end up getting more for sitting at home than you would if you were working. But the government encourages us to depend on it. And this is why a number of individuals who are uninformed voters, particularly your millennials, your black women, regardless of age, a number of older black men from Generation X on up, white women, LGBTQ, a lot of your corporations, special interest groups, your media, your education institutions, your pastors, they all believe in socialism. But many of them have never lived in a socialist country. And when COVID came, there was a second proposal for a stimulus check that never got passed because the Democrats were going to put the same pork in this bill, well, in the previous bill that they put in this bill, the previous proposed bill that they put in this bill. But thankfully, a lot of us have eyes and we have common sense who actually understood what we were voting for, and we've looked over this bill. And again, we're getting scraps. And we as hardworking Americans should get the $2,000. There should be PPP, that type of program for small businesses. People need help with their rent. We can't be bailing out other countries. That's what the Obama administration did. Donald Trump had the America First policy. And I believe in taking care of our own before we take care of anyone else's. And this bill does not take care of us. This bill basically fails us. And in the end, we're going to get scraps if we allow this bill to be passed. And I always say, if there's a bill that has a lot of pages, there's pork in that bill. Because if the legislators aren't reading the bill, they know we're not going to read the bill, most of us, because many of us don't understand what's in the bill. Fortunately, I do. But in the end, this is just another way to waste taxpayer money, but it's also another way for politicians to reward themselves as well as constituents in other countries. Because in the end, both parties want to maintain their power. Both parties want corporations running this country. They don't want us to have choice. Both parties want us to be ignorant. But a number of us aren't ignorant, but there are a number of us who are ignorant. But in the end, all of us should be calling our representatives about this bill. Because in the end, this bill goes through, we just cut our own throats because we need the money more than everybody else needs the money, because we are the driving force of this country. Because in the end, without your workers, the politicians, they wouldn't be living good. So remember, this bill is a failure. Freedom is what we're looking for, but this bill doesn't indicate freedom. There's a time we need government, and this is the time we need government. But the government has got to understand the American people. Because in the end, do you want freedom or do you want tyranny? You be the judge. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 401 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for some education, check out the Mind of STEM channel. On that channel, I give you a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. And some of the subjects I talk about are industrial engineering, cryptology, biology, and statistics. And if you want to go into more deep into politics and other topics that are too hot for YouTube, check out my Blog Talk Radio show. 215-383-5785. 215-383-5785. And at the end, I'm going to leave you with this. Be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And if you can't find me on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, check me out on Twitter. Once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 401 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. Please have a wonderful and blessed evening. God bless you. I'm out.